What's the good word, y'all? DKB here. So by now, everybody's caught up on all of the Mekhi Becton news. With that said, we definitely still have to keep an eye forward and next man up mentality. That person may not be on the roster, considering Chuma Edoga had a very, very rough practice, um, pretty much sliding in for Mekhi Becton right away. And that's not to say he can't make significant strides with 3 preseason games ahead of us, but we definitely feel even before the Mekhi Becton injury that we need to bring in a new piece. So I have 5 options for you guys that we could sign as of this moment. That is, I would say, without a doubt, better than what we currently have on the roster. And then one surprise player that may be able to get acquired via trade that we'll talk about at the end. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Number one, I think doesn't catch anybody's surprise. Duane Brown, a guy that we've already heard confirmed by Joe Douglas. He's speaking to the wheels are in motion in regards to trying to get a deal done with him. There's a lot of factors that go into this, though. Duane Brown's asking price, I'm sure, has to bump up a little bit with the expectation now that he's not coming in as a spot duty starter potentially. He's coming in as an actual starter due to this injury. Now, there's a lot of intriguing things that happens with this. Keep in mind, he's 37 years old. He's been a left tackle for the entirety of his career in the NFL. And then again, that asking price, I'm sure will have to sweeten the deal a little bit unless Joe Douglas is definitely set on a certain number. So if we want to just dive into that natural left tackle position for a moment, the most logical sense that this makes, and we've seen them do the same thing with ending the tackle competition early, moving Elijah Vera Tucker early in the offseason, is to simply move George Fant to right tackle and allows George Fant to play his natural position to make the most of all the talent. Obviously, this wouldn't be a great benefit to George Fant in regards to what he's looking to accomplish in his career, but it most likely would be temporary. This still would give us time to try to work out a contract with George Fant. Meanwhile, we should be able to get a lot better sustained success with the offensive line with that simple shift. So that would be the one thing to keep in mind if and when we do hear that a Duane Brown signing does occur, is what that reconfiguring of the offensive line is going to actually look like for us. Now, for my second player, one of the more interesting ones, and a former player of ours, actually, a guy that I definitely loved playing with in Madden, among other things, is Brandon Shell. Um, Again, a lot of people on this list, there's going to be red flags somewhere. Brandon Shell's not a world beater. He provides worst case scenario, pretty bad coverage, but as of late, he's been a very serviceable starter. He just hasn't been able to develop into that top tier option for us. But when we take a look at what our scheme is now compared to what he was operating in when he came into the league, and keep in mind, he's been with the Seahawks where we've seen this improvement. This should allow those natural tools in his agility, his athleticism to be on display. So I would expect somewhat of a seamless transition, and we're talking about a natural right tackle here, where he's been able to kind of play that swing backup role during his tenure with the Jets, but he definitely seems most comfortable at right tackle, so we wouldn't have to make any changes to the line, as well as getting a player on a much cheaper contract than, say, a Duane Brown, that potentially could prove that, maybe he can extend his years with the New York Jets a little bit longer. His question marks outside of the production piece is really going to be the fact that he's been not the most durable, 12 games missed over the last 2 years. But again, at this point in the off season, we're kind of mincing things a bit here. So that's another, complimentary option that can be serviceable for us this year. Our third option, Eric Fisher, the previous number one, rated tackle for his draft. I want to say this was back in 2013 now. And at this point in his career, I think it's safe to say he's been a much better run blocker than a pass blocker. It helps us out in the aspect that we're expecting to run a lot more, but at the same time, we don't want Zach Wilson running for his life. And it's not to say that Eric Fisher's been a turnstile by any means, but he's definitely had a very concerning year, most recently where he was getting beat on almost 10% of his dropbacks. So that's something to be concerned of. Now, for the plus side, he definitely is durable. I think I've seen something like he's played in at least 15 of, until recently, 15 out of 16 games for like 7 of 8 seasons, something crazy like that. So we know that there shouldn't be any crazy expectation that he'll miss time, or anything will take away from him being able to come right in and kind of get to work. The other question mark, though, is going to be the last time he played right tackle was back in 2015, although he did play his first couple of years at that position. Shouldn't be a huge adjustment, but for all of the same reasons we heard why Mekhi Becton was taking a lot longer to adjust to right tackle, or at least not, being an amazing dominating force right off the bat, was the fact that you do have to rework your mind a little bit to understand where your new blocking assignments are going to be, different things of that nature. For our fourth option, we have Brian Bulaga. For guys that are familiar with that name, he's previously of the Packers, 33 years old. He's only played in 11 games over 2 seasons, so again, a little bit of durability concerns here. The bigger question mark is what those kind of injuries were, which were mostly groin and back injuries, which are soft tissue, very sensitive areas. They can be very finicky, even if things go completely perfect in a rehab process. So I would say it's a major red flag there. The medical team would have to be absolutely sure that they have no indications that there's anything wrong for us to be comfortable picking him up. But if we want to base it off his pedigree, his performance, and what he's done in his career, he's definitely a top 10 tackle that we can bring in, and we should expect that he can come in and help dominate right away on this offensive line. Again, the biggest question mark with him would be, can we get some consistency in seeing him on the field? That's been one of our biggest struggles lately with some of these players that we've been able to bring in to kind of help beef up the team. And our final player is Bobby Massie, another 33-year-old individual. He's offering more essentially like the Brandon Shell kind of production for what we can expect. Something middle tiering. He might wow you and kind of jump into that above average mode a little bit. But again, another natural right tackle. Red flag here again is going to be absenteeism. Missed 19 games in 3 seasons, so not quite as bad as a few others on this list. But again, concerning, we need to bring in somebody that we know shouldn't really miss time for, really any reason that we would have indications over. Now, a fun one to just kind of, wrap the list up would be a potential trade candidate. And there's definitely a lot of names that we can throw out there. I know Tevin Jenkins is one of the most popular ones, but for me, I'm going to go with a connection that Joe Douglas already would have with the previous employer in the Eagles. And I'm looking at Andre Dillard. This was a guy that I believe, from what I can recall, the Jets were looking at him heavily as well at the time. Just kind of fell through our hands. We know that our scouting staff wasn't the best, but Joe Douglas was there around the time that that the Eagles were drafting Andre Dillard. He's very familiar with what he offers, what can potentially be there for us. So this will be a move not only for the right now with sliding him in. This potentially could be a move for the future. We're talking about a kid that's only 26 years old, which is extremely young. In tackle years, for players that haven't, gotten a lot of starting opportunities, there's big potential here. I mean, the guy is massive. His athleticism is pretty much off the charts. He's been beaten out by 2 guys that just so happen to be ridiculously more athletic than him, which is saying something. And keep in mind, this is a guy that, at least when we've seen spot duty starting, being able to see about 300 or so snaps in the season, he's provided some above average production. So it's not 100% guesswork with the previous foresight that Joe Douglas had just from the draft day all the way up till now, and then what we recently can pull from tape. There's a reasonable assumption that this would be a great fit for us. The only question would be, what would it take to pull him from the Eagles? And do we really want to trade resources for a player, although this is a guy that can definitely grow with the roster, rather than just spending some cap money this season and then looking towards the draft for the long-term reinforcement. So there's the list for you guys. Let me know what your thoughts are, and if there's any players I missed out on that you definitely feel like should be in consideration here. Other than that, appreciate the support as always, and I will catch you guys again. Peace.